Hello and welcome to my Woolly PhD. My name's Liz Scarf. This is a weekly vlog about what I'm learning and making in my PhD in anthropology, all about wool, mostly based in Iceland. This week I am thinking about the anthropologist's body in the field and the way our physicality, so what our bodies can and can't do, different bodily functions and sort of psychological and somatic experiences, how they're all part of sort of shaping the knowledge that we generate in the field. So anthropology used to make these kind of some claims to objectivity, right, as a research approach. So this idea that we could go into a community, we could observe without bias, and that communities wouldn't change their behaviour, their conduct or anything based on our presence. Like we could be this detached observer and they would just go on as if we weren't there. All right. And the kind of different observers will more or less observe the same things, right? And this isn't the case anymore, which is really good because it's super delusional, right? And now most anthropologists think a lot about how they impact the field that they are in, how that impacts the knowledge that they're generating, and the way it impacts the way they translate what they experience into research outputs. So the papers they write, conferences, exhibitions maybe, all kinds of things that they generate from the research, that these are also subjective processes. So it's become a very reflexive discipline in that it self-reflects in general, and having what they call the reflexive turn, right, in the 1970s, 1980s. And this continues, I think, as an ongoing evolution of thinking within the field, rooted significantly in sort of decolonial and feminist, particularly feminist critiques. And in particular, the reflexive turn really examined the way gender and race and power dynamics impact the researchers' data, their analysis, their outputs. And there's a somatic turn as well, has also included a reflexive element that really thinks a lot about how the researcher's bodily capital, which is a term by Pierre Bourdieu, who's just looking at this book, which I'm not going to show. Okay, I'll show you the book. What am I thinking? There's heaps of books by Bourdieu. He's was a prolific writer. But this Key Concepts, right, it's edited by Michael Grenfell, actually is like a reader. And I think that's really great. If, like me, you can really struggle with the language of philosophy sometimes, right? Like it can be so abstract. So I love a good reader to get started on trying to understand someone before I read their work. But I do have some of his work and it's more readable than I expected. Anyway, this term bodily capital, it really is about what affordances, what does your body allow you to do, what does it kind of not allow you to do, and therefore for a researcher how the bodily capital impacts the research, right? And there's lots of different sort of articles and book chapters about this. So if you want to go hunting, you can just sort of start sort of researching like the reflexive turn in anthropology, and there'll be lots and lots and lots to read. But one example I think of in my research in Iceland, and I think about this a bit, and I have to think about it lots more, it is about gender, right? So being a female researcher, I have easier access into the lives of other women than men in Iceland, but probably in most cultures that would be the case. There are some incredibly fascinating things happening with men in the agricultural sector in Iceland, and I doubt I will be able to get close to it at all. But the very fascinating things happening with women in the agricultural sector and what women say about men in the agricultural sector, this I can get closer to just because of my gender, right? So my gender shapes the interactions I have in the field, which shapes the data, which shapes my analysis of the data. Being a female also shapes how I think and write based on my own lived experience of gender. And all of this will impact kind of the outputs that I create, right? So, and none of this is a problem. it's more a kind of a consideration or a criteria, right? So as long as I can acknowledge this and include it somehow in my thinking, that's okay, right? But it does also prompt me to make more effort to fill the gaps created by the gender factor, or think, how could I find out more in this area that my gender just doesn't open a doorway easily for me? Is there a way in which I could still get something, learn something in a space that isn't normally easy for me to access? So one of the things that this prompts me to, though, right, when I'm thinking about how do I kind of get more access to men and what they're thinking and doing in the field, right? So it's partly about how I use my body in the field to be more in relationship across genders. So one of them is just by engaging in highly physical farm activities, I'm more likely to be around men, which increases my chance of interacting with them. So I kind of try to get in there as much as I can. But that's not to say that women aren't out there doing highly physical labour. They really, really are. But there is still a very obvious gender division of labour in the agricultural sector, I think, in Iceland. But there have been things that I can't do or can't be a part of because of my own physical capacity that, again, aren't so much a problem, but they're more a criteria for understanding the kind of knowledge I generate through my participation and my non-participation. That being said, like, the strength of Icelandic farming women, especially their back strength, it's off the chart. Anyway, it motivated me to get to the gym and kind of really soup up my weightlifting game while I've been home. So I'll go back a bit stronger and, be able to sort of participate even more, I think, in farm activities. So yes, it's one way in which characteristics of my body shape my research. And at this moment, my research is the fieldwork stage, it's the data gathering stage. Again, it will be interested when I get more into analysis, how does my own physicality shape that experience as well? Another part of the bodily capital, right, is what your body can do. And so, like, skills, so like my knitting skills, my spinning skills, my experience with wool gives me some doorways in. Even if I couldn't, though, like, people are generally very welcoming and keen to show people how to learn these things. So that would be a different experience. Neither is like a good or a bad thing. They're just ways of going, how does this facilitate my access in the field, my inclusion in activities so I can learn more about people's lives. I'm glad I know how to knit and spin, though, for this project, actually. Yeah, I think I really like that. And I have to think on that one more. Maybe I have to do a whole video about that. Okay, another example of using, I guess, this psychosomatic experience of my own body in the field to help me understand the culture more, right, was a long drive that I did into the north of the country. It was much snowier at that time, and it was my first time driving in like proper snow. And there was so much that I was not aware of in terms of what does it mean to drive in really snowy conditions. Like how you can't see the road you're driving on, but you can't see the road you've got to turn onto as well. You might see the street sign for it, but actually working out where the turn is, because of course there's little posts that go along, but they're not like that often that you can see how does that turn actually work. Anyway, so many things. Like, there's so many challenges, and though I just sort of the landscape and landmarks are erased by the snow, particularly in the dark. And of course, you can't see on the side of the road how much of a dip there is off the side. You don't know if you can sort of pull over. So many things that I had not ever kind of thought about. Anyway, suffice to say, I was pretty stressed during this drive. Some moments, I say moments, they weren't short moments. I was stressed for a long time, like especially when it was dark. Some moments were more stressful than others, but they were also really generative in that they kind of created these little doorways of curiosity that I could go into. And one was like the relief that I would feel when another motorist passed on the road, and because there wasn't many. But every time someone did pass, I thought, okay, if I did get stuck, if my car broke down or I slipped off the road or something, someone would come before I froze to death. I mean, if it wasn't really late at night. I was not planning to be there late at night. But that made me think about the importance of maintaining good relationships in community, right? That is just essential for survival in extreme weather conditions, and how that shapes how you behave relative to your neighbours and kind of collective action and collective care. That was really interesting, and just sort of thinking, oh, I wonder, how to inquire into that more and look for that more and understand that more. The other thing was the relief of seeing lights on across the landscape, so especially as it got darker. And you wouldn't be able to see the building necessarily, but if there was a light there, it meant that there was a building there, which likely meant that there was some people there, or at least there's some kind of shelter there, right? And this could be a really important guide in the night. If you're stuck in the night and you've got to walk from a broken down car, to a place, you can see a light, right, how to get there. So I asked some people about this, and they were sort of saying there's a very long history of leaving lights on through the night, pre-electricity, exactly for this thing, that people getting lost at night would be able to find shelter. And it's, as a practice, it still shapes some really interesting sort of social and infrastructural processes in Iceland too, around the installation of lights, who's paying for power, really, really interesting. So my own stress during the drive, right, and my own inexperience being a snow driver, and sort of noticing what relieved my stress, it all helped me to generate questions to ask that added to my understanding of the culture. And this, as an aside, the cold is actually one of the reasons I picked Iceland to research in. Like I said, it's so far outside my life experience, and I've, as long as I can remember, been super fascinated by how does extreme cold shape a culture. So anyway, I'm getting to many insights, and many of them through my own body, right? Another thing was I've never had the tops of my ears feel pain from cold till I was in Iceland. I didn't even know it was a thing. And then I went, oh, okay, that's a thing which is going to now direct how I dress and garments that I want to wear, what I want to make them out of. I think I ended up knitting a headband thing, which I don't like the look of these things, but I was like, oh, I get this now. So all these little things are actually part of the research and are derived by the experience of the body. And there are so many of these moments in the field, right? In one way, we could say it's the whole experience, because you're there in your body the whole time. It can't not be happening that you are experiencing all of this through your body, through the lived experiences you've had that you make comparisons to. It's the challenge a lot of the time is to catch it, notice it, get it in your field notes before you forget it, or also that, your field notes end up just being, they are really, really long anyway, but it takes hours to document all that stuff. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about a lot, particularly as I've been fatigued over the past month or two. That's really lifting now, which is a great segue into what have I been making, because not much, actually. This past week, and I think I will kind of continue this over until I leave again, I've been really focusing on proper rest, which has actually meant not making as much, because making things is not as restful as I'd like to think it is. What I have worked on, I haven't shown you this for a few weeks now. It's not really much to look at, but this is I'm not sure if it's called the diaphanous shawl. It is a diaphanous shawl though. It's a shawl by Sweater Babe, and this is for my daughter in a mohair that we picked out in a yarn store in London. I think it's by Earth Yarns. Actually, I can't remember. It's quite lovely. It's a nice colour for her, and I think I've said before, I will never knit with mohair on its own again, but it's going okay. It's not perfect lace work. I'm laughing, but you know, it's what I've done, and it doesn't have to be perfect. That's okay. I've done a little bit on the socks, but mostly I've been doing yoga nidra and really easy read, or easy to read fiction books. I got a bunch out from the library where I can just sit on the couch and read something that's not adrenalizing. I'm also reading something that's very adrenalizing. I've got to kind of keep that one to a minimum. But yeah, I think actually these last few weeks has been the least amount of knitting I've done in at least the past 4 years. Anyway, there has been a little bit of sewing, but mostly I've been backing off on all making things and just resting more. It's been really good. I really feel a difference already. Okay, that's enough for this week. Thanks for watching. I will see you next week. Bye.